All right, so we are live. I hope you can hear me okay because my microphone's not working, so I'm using this microphone, so it should be okay. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome to this live Q&A of understanding your Aspie partner. So thanks to everyone who provided questions in advance. So I've got a couple of questions here that I'll be going through that are pre-prepared that you asked in advance. So thanks everyone for that. And otherwise, if you have a question while I'm talking, please write it in the chat. And after I finish answering whatever question that I'll be doing, then I'll take a look at the chat and we can have a bit more live interaction, which should be fun. So this is a really interesting topic. Thanks everyone for suggesting it and being so enthusiastic about it. And like I said, I'll be looking at my questions. So I've got my laptop here with some questions, and I can see the chat here. And when I finished any one question, I'll take a look at the chat and prioritize any further clarification questions that appear in the chat. So the first question on my list is, what do I do if I suspect my partner is on the spectrum? So this is an interesting one because a lot of adults who discover they're on the spectrum really strongly identify with the positive aspects of being on the spectrum. And so for a lot of us, that discovery is a really positive thing. It's like, I describe it that I found this missing piece of the puzzle and all of a sudden my entire life started making sense. However, it's not always a positive experience, especially if you are going through some difficult things and the word autism or the word Asperger's or the whole concept is around the negative aspects of of yourself that you see as causing problems. So my advice here is that it's not really all that important to have the label, to use the label of Asperger's or autism. What's more important, I mean, it can be helpful, but what's more important is to be helpful in going through whatever difficulties might be the case at the moment. So I would probably encourage people to suggest, oh, look, I found this resource and it's talking about Asperger's and it is something that you might be interested in. And if someone is not interested in that, then it probably doesn't help to push it on them or try to convince them that they are on the spectrum, because that's kind of like pushing a diagnosis on someone and they're more likely to resist that. And it's much more liberating when you discover something for yourself. So by all means, you can sort of nudge someone in the direction and show them resources and focus on the positive aspects and the endearing aspects, potentially, of people on the spectrum. And that might spark your partner's curiosity of thinking, oh, maybe this is me. Maybe there are benefits for me from looking at this new topic and learning about autism and speaking to others on the spectrum. And for a lot of us, it doesn't really matter so much about the formal diagnosis. I get a lot of messages from people saying, look, I don't know if I'm on the spectrum or not, but I find your videos really helpful and I can really relate to a lot of what you're saying. So if you suspect your partner is on the spectrum, my advice would be don't sort of push that label onto them and instead just play with their curiosity, see if you can get them curious about some of the aspects and some of the things that you're learning. Or the other option is, if you just learn about autism, then it doesn't really matter if your partner's on the spectrum or not, because you're still going to be able to use what you've learned in your relationships. I mean, I use what I learn in my relationships with people on the spectrum with pretty much everybody, because it helps with good communication skills and reading different body language when I assume someone else might communicate in a different way than I do. So I hope that makes sense. Just checking the chat. Hi Naomi, hey, hi Jeff. My husband felt the same way and realizing he was on the spectrum. Yep. So yeah, for a lot of us, it's a relief and like a discovery process, but it should be more of a self-discovery rather than a label that someone else is using to try and define me, because I especially dislike other people putting me into boxes, because I feel like other people don't really understand me very well. Whereas I self-identify as whatever I like. Okay, second question, very interesting. How can I work on eye contact during moments of intimacy? Interesting. So my first reaction to this would be to, if you're asking this question of yourself, is to say, why is eye contact so important to you? Is eye contact during moments of intimacy very important or not? Is there another way around it? Is there a real issue there, or is it just a different way of expressing love? So for some people, eye contact is really nice. For some people, eye contact is really intimate and really special and really peaceful and really enjoyable. For some people, the opposite is true. Eye contact is not particularly nice and not intimate at all, or perhaps even too much in the moment, and they need a break. I know I personally find eye contact quite not overwhelming, but very, very intense. So I would not look someone in the eye unless I had to more than a couple of seconds. And this goes for my partner as well. It would be very rare for me to have extended eye contact. However, is that really a problem? Are there other ways to communicate that connection, communicate that love that you're feeling in a very intimate moment through a different way? Maybe with words, maybe with touch, maybe with, I don't know, there are a million different ways to express oneself. So just because the use of eye contact is difficult for a person doesn't necessarily mean that they're not trying to communicate that same thing. So let's say that this is a big problem for you, and you find it difficult to connect with your partner because they don't make eye contact with you, especially in intimate moments. It might be worth letting them know that, just so that you're both on the same page about what the other person expects, what the other person likes. Maybe they can give you a little bit of eye contact, and then that's enough for you. And it's like a gesture saying, look, I don't really like this all that much, but I'm going to give you a little bit because I know that you enjoy it. However, if that is not a willing gift, if that's too difficult or too uncomfortable for a person, then that might just be how your partner expresses themselves. Okay. So next question. Of the questions that were asked in the lead up to this live webinar, live Q&A. Why do little things sometimes have such a big impact? Are they really a big deal? Is it reasonable to just ask them to get over it? So sometimes it feels like someone is overreacting, and the temptation is to just wish they could get over it. So what I'll say in response to this one is that it's hard to know how someone is perceiving a particular situation. So if something feels like a big deal to me, it's because it is. And you could ask me to get over it, and I could try to get over it, but it depends how big it is for me at the time. So in general, asking someone to get over it is not very helpful, because it puts the responsibility solely on that one person to deal with the problem by themselves. So a more practical way, a more productive way, is to try and deal with the problem together as a couple. So that might look like asking questions about what's going on for you at the moment. Is there something I can do? Is there something that you can do to make this situation better for you? Sometimes if there is something very upsetting or very overstimulating, it's not always possible to put into words and specify exactly what it is. So maybe you can sit with your partner in that moment and try to figure out together, why am I reacting so strongly to this moment? It doesn't, intellectually, this is a really small thing, yet I'm having a very big emotional reaction to this. What's going on? So in that sense, by being with them and working through it together, all of a sudden you're on the same team, and it doesn't feel so much like you need to get over it because it's your problem and this should not be an issue for you. That doesn't feel good when someone says that to you. Okay. So, next question. My Aspie hubby and I struggle with being on the same page, being passionate with each other. He gets quickly overwhelmed, insecure, and teenage boy-like. How can he relax more and be more physically in tune with himself? Firstly, something I forgot to say at the start that I intended to say at the start, if I use any gendered language, it's not because it has to be that particular gender, it's just because it's an example. So I will often insinuate that there is a man on the spectrum and a woman who's not on the spectrum. It doesn't really matter genders of either party at all. It's just that if I'm speaking from my own experience, I'm going to be the man on the spectrum with a woman not on the spectrum, probably. And also a lot of the questions came from women asking about men. So that's not prescriptive, it's just an example of what it might be like. So in terms of getting on the same page, being passionate with each other, that's a big question. That's a pretty intimate question. How I would respond to that is, in my personal experience, it's the unspoken expectations that cause the most amount of anxiety. So if I'm worried about what my partner is going to think, if I'm worried, am I pleasing my partner enough or not? Am I worried, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? Should I, whatever? That can be really, really difficult. Alternatively, flipping the tables a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm enjoying myself right now, but I want my partner to be enjoying herself. So what am I going to do there? I'm not sure how I'm feeling, and there's a lot of pressure to be sure about what you're doing. So again, this is an example where what helps a lot is for you to both be on the same team, solving the same problem. And that reduces anxiety a lot because I'm not alone in this. I'm not going to be judged for getting the wrong answer. I'm not going to be judged for having a difficulty in understanding what I want or understanding what you want or anything like that. All of a sudden we're on the same team. We're talking about it openly, and I'm saying, I'm not sure how I feel right now. I'm not sure what I feel right now. I'm not particularly attracted to you right now. And now suddenly I am, and now suddenly I'm not. I've got no idea. So by talking about it, it puts us both on the same page, and it allows me time to not panic. And that time helps a lot with introspection. Because if I'm worried about what my actions are doing, then I don't have the time and focus to see, how am I feeling right now? And that goes to the teenage boy comment as well, because I know when I was growing up, these kind of things, you kind of had to pretend you knew what you were doing. Oh, I'm talking to a girl. I've never talked to a girl before, but I'm going to pretend that I know what I'm doing because that's cool, right? Or something. So in a more mature relationship, there's no need to do that. Okay. Here's an interesting one. Should I expect my partner to proactively tell me if something upsets him? Or should I be the one to ask if I think something is bothering him without being pushy? So again, the high-level strategy here is to both be on the same page, trying to solve the same problem. So if I'm noticing that my partner might be reacting to something, maybe I notice before they do, and I can bring it to their attention even before they notice that they're being having a reaction to something. So that can be useful. But I don't want to be pushy about telling someone else how they feel. It's more noticing something and seeing if it resonates with the other person. So what I appreciate when what people do to me is they can check in. And I like this word check in because it's not a presumptive statement. It's not saying you're clearly upset, what's wrong. It's saying you seem a bit funny. You seem upset. You seem really stiff or rigid or something. Is there something going on for you? And what that allows me to do is stop and check, because sometimes it takes that amount of time. Okay, stop what I'm doing. Check, is there something wrong? You're right, there is something wrong. What's wrong? What triggered me to be upset in this moment? So it can help a lot if you're both on the same team. Otherwise, you can get into this kind of unspoken arrangement, which is really difficult to navigate because something is clearly upsetting me, but I'm not verbalizing it. Or alternatively, you can see something is clearly upsetting me and you're not verbalizing it, which means suddenly we're dancing around the elephant in the room. And you know how well Aspies go dancing around the elephant in the room. It's difficult and we tend to trip over things. Okay. Okay, a couple more questions. Again, feel free to ask your own question in the chat or make a comment. This is a live Q&A, so you can ask follow-up questions or leave your comments. Can you talk about alternate living arrangements, separate rooms and the like, when more freedom and space is needed? So this is an interesting question because I've actually heard this kind of arrangement done by quite a few neurotypical couples that I know. I know a couple of couples who, for the entirety of their marriage, had separate bedrooms. Why? So that they didn't have the pressure of sleeping together. This is my room, this is my space. This is your room, this is your space. Would you like to come into my space? That would be cool. But there's no pressure that we have to share the same space. And the feedback I get from these neurotypical couples is it's really nice to have someone ask you, would you like to come into my space? That's a really, really nice thing to do. And it means that there's no assumption or presumption that you will necessarily want to spend time together or want to be really close to each other, which makes it even more special when you get asked. Now, in some extreme arrangements, you might have completely different houses. But again, the whole point is that I might need a certain amount of space, and it might be very difficult to constantly sacrifice what I can control for the price of being close to somebody else. These days, why can't I have both? Why can't I have my room where I can control everything, and then you can do whatever you want with your space, and we can still be in a relationship? Okay. Okay. We can be an island to ourselves sometimes, and that's not good, especially with our own mental health. Talking with our partner is good. So part of having a space to myself means that I've got a really safe space that I can use to go out and connect with the world. So it's almost like the more secure I feel where I am, the easier it is to connect with others, because I'm not constantly pushing myself, and I've always got a safe space to come back to. And this is why it's common, especially, well, becoming more common in things like schools, to have a quiet space, a chill out space, somewhere where you can retreat to, and you don't have to be constantly bombarded by people or stimulus or other things like that. It allows you to recharge so that you can connect. It's not good to isolate yourself permanently. The point of isolation is to recharge and get a bit more control so that you can connect with others after. Okay. 2 more. if he finds certain tasks very challenging, like cooking or driving, should I encourage him to try them in different ways? Or should I accept that that's part of him, or both? This is an interesting question because it's partly a person's personal choice, what they choose to do and what they choose to avoid. And as soon as you start trying to encourage someone to do something that they're not trying to do, you're kind of trying to change them as a person a little bit. So it's very important to allow someone the autonomy to choose what they would like to do. And if you would like someone to do something that they're not currently doing, then what you can do is you can set up the situation to give them an incentive to do it, for example. So if I learn how to cook, I can cook whenever I want, whatever I want, and I can choose how to do it. If I can't cook, then I have to rely on someone else, and maybe that's not so good. So in terms of, I really like this word encouraging, because encouraging is purely positive. It's saying you can do this. If you want to do this, you can do this. You might find it difficult, but I know that if you practiced it and if you learnt it and if you went and put the effort in, I know that you could do this. So don't be discouraged thinking that, oh, this is really difficult, I'll never learn how to do that. You can do it on the condition that you want to do that and you put in the effort to do that. So what you need to accept about another person is that they may or may not have the internal motivation to do whatever you think would be good for them to do. So if something is very, very difficult for me, it might be difficult to explain to someone else how difficult it is or how uncomfortable it is. And so I might not want to do it because it's really uncomfortable. So in that sense, I just want to know that I'm okay and that you're going to accept me even if I don't do this other thing that you think would be really good. So I have my own reasons for not wanting to do that. Maybe it's difficult, maybe it's uncomfortable, maybe I just can't be bothered. It all comes down to I don't have enough motivation to overcome however much energy it takes to do. So a lot of things don't take very much energy, so you don't need very much motivation. But if something is difficult or uncomfortable, it takes a lot of energy to do it. And so if I am to do it, I'm going to need a lot of self-motivation. And that's, so if you would like to encourage me to do that, you need to build me up with the encouragement and accept that I may or may not, you may or may not be successful in giving me enough motivation to overcome that thing. Okay, how are we going for time? I might do one more question. And if this is a very popular topic, I can always do another video on another day. But this last question is, what is the best way for a partner to handle a meltdown? What is the best way for a partner to handle a meltdown? So this is going to be different for every person. So instead of the word meltdown, I prefer to use the term overload. It's just an easier word that allows you to sort of understand what's happening. So if you see, oh, someone's having a meltdown, just imagine overload. Everything is too much. I don't have control because my emotional system is so hyper aroused that it's literally taking over my brain. Daniel Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence, calls this an emotional hijacking. It's literally the part of the brain that overstimulates everything else and sort of takes over. Anyway, you don't need to know the neurology behind it. If you think of overload, then sometimes doing more is not going to get through. So if I'm in a full meltdown, I might not be able to hear what you're saying. I might not be able to think or process what you're saying. I might not be able to do very much at all. So in that sense, what someone helping me is going to try and do is make the space around me as safe as possible so that I can relax and de-stress and successfully block out all the stimulus so that I can start calming down. So anything that is going to be calming for me is great. So maybe that's quiet. Maybe that's a hug. Maybe a hug is the opposite of calming. I know one friend of mine, and all her friends and family know if she's having a meltdown, do not touch her, right? That's the last thing she needs. It's not going to help. So that's why it's really dependent on the person. So if you could ask your partner, what can I do? What is going to be relaxing for you? Would you like me to talk to you? Is it relaxing for me to talk to you? Would you like me to shut up? Would you like me to turn the lights off? Would you like me to give you a hug? Would you like me to make you a cup of tea? I'm not going to be able to tell you what is best for your partner, and it's really trial and error to see what is going to help. And maybe they can give you some hints of what is the best way when I'm in complete overload. What can you do to help create a safe space around me so that I can safely calm down and express all the emotions that I need to express and deal with it myself, and then come out of that knowing that I haven't hurt myself, I haven't hurt anyone else around me, and I am free to do what I need to do to process those emotions without the fear and anxiety of constantly holding them in, because if I let it out, I would hurt someone. So creating a safe place to calm down is the goal in that. Okay, I might leave it there. This has been a whole bunch of questions that you've asked in advance around understanding my ASPE partner, understanding your ASPE partner. So if you'd like to ask more questions, if you want me to do more on this topic, then let me know in the comments or in the chat. And I can possibly do some more videos next year on relationships and things like that, if you would like. But you have to tell me what you want, because I've got a list as long as my arm of things that I could possibly do. So let me know what you would find most valuable. So thanks for watching today. And yeah, thanks everyone who commented in the chat and who participated in the live session. And I will see you all another time. Okay, bye.